western states like Southeast Arizona, you might just, see a dozen species in a given day. So I'm really excited to, see the different species that are going to be out there for anyone who cares to visit. A little background about Steve. He's a master bird bander. He's got over 25 years of experience banding hummingbirds and dippers. He's certified as a hummingbird bander trainer by the North American Banding Council. He and his wife have conducted a number of multifaceted banding studies, hummingbirds in both Western Colorado and near their home on the eastern slopes by Rocky Mountain National Park. They also conduct banding projects in Arizona at the Sedona Hummingbird Festival, and they've been doing that since 2012. Both he and his wife love gardening. They have many feeders which attract thousands of hummingbirds at peak season. Now, this is amazing to me. At peak season, the birds coming to his yard will consume up to 11 gallons. Hear that? 11 gallons of sugar water a day. So that when you fill up your little hummingbird feeder once every couple of days, just remember that. Steve has conducted many field trips, seminars, presentations, and banding demonstrations for thousands of people over the years. So tonight he's going to share with us his experiences with hummingbirds of the West. Steve, it's all yours.
Thank you. Yes, with 11 gallons of sugar water a day, it keeps us busy.
Steve, you might want to hit the display button so that we just see your screen and not your notes as well. Okay. The lower right-hand corner, that little thing that looks like a screen.
Screen.
Or you can go to the top to the slideshow menu option.
Menu option. I don't see that.
If you go down to the bottom of your screen, lower right-hand side, there's a screen. There are a few icons in the lower right.
No.
If you put your mouse down there, we'll see it. Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
At the top of your screen, there's the PowerPoint menu, and one of the items says slideshow. If you click that, you'll have an option to start the slideshow as well. Or you can go from here.
Well, I don't want to leave my notes on there, really. I'd rather have a full screen for you folks.
Well, if you put your mouse near the bottom of the screen that's being displayed, on the right-hand side, near the bottom, there are a few icons.
I see more. There's to the left is apps and meeting info.
Apps and meeting info.
It's on the bottom of the screen.
Do you see the white screen from PowerPoint that you have up there?
Yes.
That you bring your mouse down to the bottom of that screen.
Okay, there we go. Well, I don't want to see the
there you
slideshow.
Go. If you put it on the screen to the right there, you can show just the full screen from there. And now if you want to show you get your notes, you hold.
Sorry.
If you hold the mouse over that screen and right click, it will show you that menu. Presenter view.
Okay. Do you get the full screen of the PowerPoint?
We got a full screen and you have your notes.
All right. Very good. Well.
Are we recording?
Have you started the recording?
Yes, I started the recording.
Well, sorry for the slow start here, but I want to thank you all for the invitation, and it's an honor to present to you today about what we know about the Western hummingbirds, Western U.S. We currently live in a little cabin in the mountains of Boulder County. We also band birds at our home and farm on East Orchard Mesa. There we have a 18-acre farm where we grew red and golden delicious apples and apricots and some peaches and a field of alfalfa. We still have the stop touching that seat. We still have the hay field and some apricot trees. And so this talk is just to share with you a few of the things that I've observed about hummingbirds in the Western US. My focus is primarily, although I've birded in all of the Western states and provinces, most of my familiarity is with the birds that we see in Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. But so you'll get some of that. And because I'm a bird bander, our perspective is what we see of the birds in the hand. But first, I want to acknowledge our gratitude to the bird banding laboratory of the USGS, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and Arizona Game and Fish, and especially our teachers and mentors, Professor Steve Russell and Ruth M. Russell. So because we're talking about bird banding, you'll see a lot of bands on the hummingbirds. Just wanted to show you a little bit about what they look like, first of all. These cards come as printed from on aluminum alloy, and they have 300 unique numbers on each sheet. And our job is then to strip those sheets horizontally so that we then can cut each individual band to the exact size for this sex and species. And they'll range from anywhere from 5.3 to 7.9 millimeters in length prior to being formed round. The finished band is roughly 1.3 millimeters high. So here in the mountains of Colorado, and I'm sure in the mountains all across the West, hummingbirds face a lot of challenges, both in the spring and the fall. And here, as you can see, this we lived at 8,500 feet elevation in Peaceful Valley, and the hummingbirds have to adapt to this. This picture was taken, I believe, a year ago on May 20th at our cabin. At that time, we had a lot of hummingbirds here, drinking out of about 15 feeders at that time. These are mostly the 48-ounce feeders you see here. And then we had an 18-inch snow that just filled the trees, and the hummingbirds just had to deal with it. Fortunately, our feeders were under the eaves, which protected them to some extent from the snow. And during that first day, all of the birds were here. The next morning, many of the birds had already left, particularly the males. The females that were there, I expect, had just begun to build their nests. And here you see, by the way, all the feeders are hanging, and we use a pulley system to keep hoist the feeders up out of the reach of bears to the 9 to 10 foot level. And when we need to, we put heat lamps on the feeders, and the birds enjoy those lamps, the warmth from those lamps that keeps the feeders thawed. So hummingbirds are part of the family Trochilidae. There are, I believe, to this point, 358 species in the Western Hemisphere. They vary greatly in size. In the United States, Canada, they'll weigh from anywhere from 2.1 grams for a calliope hummingbird to 7.5 grams. But actually, some of the birds, the rivoles we're seeing in Arizona, have weighed 7.9 grams, and I expect we'll see even higher weights than that. So first to talk about is the Anna's hummingbird. We banded a lot of Annas in Sedona, but I'm not very familiar with them in detail. And because we're doing different things and studying different things as we're banding at the Sedona Hummingbird Festival and now at our Sedona station and Oak Creek Canyon sites. The closely related is the Costa's hummingbird. It's a small hummingbird of Mexico and the U.S. And it's interesting. These birds are of the hot desert areas in southern New Mexico and Arizona. You'll find them throughout Phoenix and Tucson and south, of course, into Mexico. But we were the first to discover that they're actually regular visitors to the Sedona area. And they actually had a male that spent the summer there in 2022. So the question is, was it really breeding there? Well, next is the black-chinned hummingbird. It ranges throughout the Southwest and even into parts of British Columbia and Western Alberta. This is the bird we ban every day as the primary bird of the lowlands in Palisade, Colorado, along the Colorado River, about 34 miles from Utah. It's slightly smaller than the stocky broadtail. I'd characterize it as a skinny desert bird, and the black-chinned occupies a lot less habitat in Colorado than does the broadtail. Its estimated population is less than 1/10 that of the 122,000 black chins to 1.5 million broadtails in the state of Colorado. They prefer a riparian habitat. They'll be in a wide variety of habitats from pinyon juniper to farmlands, but they're widely spread throughout much of the canyons and mesas of western Colorado and in the same locations, really same type of habitat in Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona. The female black-chin, very similar, but it's significantly larger, visibly larger than the male. It has a distinctly larger, longer bill and wings. The bill generally appears to be more decurved, and that's really because of the additional length of it. Here's a black-chinned hummingbird at our home in Palisade. They feed on a wide variety. We really plant for hummingbirds and butterflies, and they really don't go to the culinary sage, but the bumblebees do, but it's really a perfect color for the male black-chin. And this is a little more typical view of a black-chin where their gorget appears to be all black because it really takes the reflectance from the sun at just the right angle for that brilliant violet gorget to appear. This is a juvenile immature black-chinned, and it's working the Hypomopsis standing cypress that we have planted there. To the right, you'll also see one of our favorite plants. The pink plant in the picture is the Rocky Mountain bee plant, the Cleoma serrulata. And just another view of the black-chinned immature male black-chinned this one is. And you might notice that of the buffy character to the back, all of the feathers on these immature birds have buffy edges to their feathers, and it gives them a dingy character, a dingy look, particularly in black chins. But you'll see that buffy feather edges in the Celastrus genus as well. And this is a character that can be seen when a bird is in flight. Here's another bird from our gardens, again, an immature. You can see the buffy feather edges on its crown and back, and uh, the scapulars. The bird is feeding here on Mexican sunflower, and they went to it a lot. Um, and they'll go to a wide variety of sunflowers. They're pretty sticky. I think that these sunflowers actually contained enough nectar to satisfy the birds. But of course, being sticky, they attract a lot of insects, and the hummingbirds certainly collect insects from those flowers. Oh, and this is a photo sent to me by a friend, Shane Qualls. It shows hummingbirds gathering grit here from a sanded wall or a stuccoed wall. But I've seen it many, many times here in the mountains with broadtails and rufous, and also at the Desert Museum in Tucson, Arizona. And these birds go down to ground to collect grit in order to help their digestion. Next is the ruby-throated hummingbird. It's here in the lower 48. They're primarily east of the Mississippi River, but they do range into Kansas and sometimes into southwest Kansas. We often see them in eastern Colorado, near the Kansas border, and I would doubt that there are some breeding birds there, but we simply haven't had the opportunity or been able to take the time to study that possible population. The one on the left is one of 3 juvenile ruby throats that we banded in Palisade, and our mentors banded one also in the mountains outside of Gunnison in the Powderhorn area. So they do make it to town. The bird on the left in the hand, actually, we recognized it immediately as a ruby throat because of the red feather in its gorget. The calliope hummingbird is the smallest bird in mainland North America, smallest hummingbird and smallest hummingbird as well. It's really unmistakable by its size and its short bill, its tail, and it has a rather pot-bellied appearance. You can see this, and when you get good looks at calliopes, you see that pot belly, and it really stands out in relation to their very, very short tail and their very short wings. Like the rufous, the tiny calliope, it's a regular post-breeding or fall migrant throughout Colorado. In most years, we see them in far fewer numbers than the rufous, but there's a pattern to suggest that more of these birds move through Colorado and east during drought years. The males dominate east of the Continental Divide, and the vast majority on the west side are females and immatures, with very few adult males. So this is a pretty interesting partitioning of resources. In the photo, you'll notice the female on the lower left that might readily be identified as a juvenile male, but the color of the spots in the center of the throat are actually a pinkish purple, quite different than the deeper magenta red of the adult male and the juvenile males. Here's just a few shots of calliopes, this on Agastache. And this calliope wears a band measuring about 1.1 millimeters inside diameter. The band weighs about 6/10 thousandths of a gram, and it's a tiny fraction of the bird's 2.4 gram weight. Yep, there we go. Back to, I have an itchy finger here. The computer is faster than I am. Sit, stay. It won't. Well, go back there and hold it. It won't hold. Funny. But broadtails range throughout the mountainous west to the mountains of Eastern California and into Oregon, even in the southern portions of British Columbia and western Alberta. It's a stocky bird, and the males have a bright, brilliant red throat, and the females have rows of spangles or spots in the throat. Many of the females, about, I had a photo of a female here, but about 27% of females, and you won't see this in the ID books, have one or more iridescent red spots in the throat. And if it's in the center of the throat, that's indicative of an adult female. If there are feathers to the right side, iridescent red feathers to the side, that would be a juvenile male. The juvenile females have no iridescent colors in their gorget. This is a bird that we caught in our yard here in Peaceful Valley. When I first saw it, it appeared to be all white in comparison to the green-backed broadtails we had here. But when we caught it, I realized this wasn't a full albino, even though it had pinkish legs and a largely pink bill. It didn't have the pink eyes, and so it's a little bit different, but it sure stood out from the appearance of the broadtails. This is an interesting picture, and it tells a story that we had of this bird coming to our feeders and having difficulty feeding. And bill injuries are fairly common in hummingbirds, but this bird was unable to open its bill. And so we determined that it wasn't a growth on the bill itself. The bird was only able to extend its tongue about 4 millimeters to feed from flowers and feeders. So after about 3 days of trying, I was finally able to catch the bird, get it in hand, isolate it so it didn't move, and very carefully extract the hard head of a beetle impaled on its bill. The tongue had actually begun to grow around the head, so that it probably was experiencing this for 2 weeks and more. And almost certainly the bird would not have survived if we hadn't taken that off. We use a combination of flowers and feeders. This is just a scene on the north side of the house where we keep a lot of the feeders, actually have feeders all the way around the house and out into the hummingbird meadow. The population will grow at the peak of season to 25 to 35,000 birds. We can tell that by the nectar we use, because in addition to the 11 gallons of sugar water we were feeding at the peak of season, the end of July and early August, our next door neighbor, well, 2 doors up, was feeding about the same amount to as many hummingbirds. So we've got a lot of hummingbirds here. And the population has developed and built up since my grandmother started feeding hummingbirds in the late 1930s. This is just the view of our little hummingbird meadow, which we are expanding as we do fire mitigation into the forest here. So today, this forest is much more open back in here, and we planted and seeded that with native hummingbird flowers. Just an image of an adult female broadtail. She feeds heavily on the Rocky Mountain penstemon, this purple flower in the picture. In the background are white yarrow. There's more Rocky Mountain penstemon. In the back on the right, there would be Agastache urticafolia, a great favorite of the birds, and the various sunflowers, many, many different native sunflowers here in the yard. The colorful fuchsia-colored flowers that you see there are dianthus, or the sweet williams, and they are flowers that my grandmother planted in the 1950s, and which we've kept in the area because the hummingbirds go to them. And though it's a non-native, we keep them because in part it's the remembrance of Grandma Ann. And here we live in moose country. We have these critters. I mean, they're massive animals. They're Shiras moose, the smallest moose in North America, actually, but they frequent our yard in the summer, certainly daily to weekly, and often in the winter. They, to our chagrin, they love the hummingbird plants. They'll rip them up out of the ground, or they'll eat the flowers. And it's just, it's just amazing. I will turn on sprinklers to try to dissuade them, and that sometimes works. But basically, we still love seeing them, and uh, we're happy that they're with the birds. It's an amazing. Had videos from a trail cam. I have multiple trail cams around the property, and the hummingbirds will continue feeding within inches of the mouth of these beasts as they're chomping away on the flowers the hummingbirds are feeding from. The birds will fly over, under, around, and through the legs of these of the moose. And it's fascinating. It's amazing. I hope all of you get to see it someday. We also have a number of baths or fountains. These are called red pot fountains. You can look that up on the internet. They are the best fountains we've ever found to attract hummingbirds. They love the riffles on the edge. They love the bubbles in the center. Here's broadtails, and sometimes we'll see 8 or 9 birds in there bathing at the same time. Here's a juvenile male rufous hummingbird. I had just banded this bird, and it went directly to the fountain and put his body directly over the bubbler you see there in the center. Here's just a few images of rufous. This is basically their breeding range, and really mostly a Pacific Northwest breeder, can be found as far north as Wasilla, Alaska. Our fellow bander and team bander, Kate McLaughlin in Cordova, Alaska, has been studying rufous and the movement of Anna's hummingbirds north into the Southwest Alaska. Rufous will be found as far north as Wasilla. And someone told me that they could actually see Russia from there. These birds, their route is elliptical, so they move in their northbound migration along the Pacific coast. And then after breeding, they shotgun out across Canada, across the United States on their journey, their southbound journey to Mexico. But many, many more actually are wintering in the southeast of the U.S. And this is really because of the wide plantings there, and the warmer temperatures make it generally more conducive to this bird's survival. Just a few images here is of the male rufous on the scarlet gilia. On this bird, I'll never forget. It's been a while, but we heard a report of a white hummingbird coming to a feeder there, and it was immediately evident that this bird was a rufous by its call. And then we got good views with binoculars of its spread tail to verify that it was a rufous and not an Allen's hummingbird. It was extremely windy that day. I set up some traps, and the bird just wouldn't go into the trap, so I wasn't able to put a band on this bird. But what a beauty he was. So similar to the rufous hummingbird is the Allen's hummingbird. And in Colorado, it hasn't yet been documented in this state, even though Allen's has been documented in Wyoming, Kansas, Utah, and New Mexico. Nobody has actually ever proved one to be here. The problem is that generally you need to either catch the bird and examine it in hand, or have a very good fast camera that catch the image of the very, very fine R5 or outer rectrices to distinguish those rectrices from the rufous hummingbirds. They measure the outer rectrices measure about 1.2 millimeters at the widest end. In rufous are generally 2.4 to 3.5 millimeters wide at the widest point. This is a bird that I photographed at our home outside of Palisade in Central Orchard Mesa. And I believed almost certainly, both from good views of the tail and of the back, that it was an Anna's hummingbird. But I had traps out for 3 full days, and it just would not be enticed. So it didn't get a band, and we didn't document the first Colorado record Allens. We did actually catch a few years later juvenile male Allens, but we didn't recognize it until we were analyzing the data. And so we didn't get photos and the documentation other than measurements that would show it as an Allens. But when we do publish about our first Allens, it will be included in that. We check every rufous very carefully for an Allens to try to get the first record Allens. But you'll see this bird has what we would measure as a 90% greenback rufous. But the outer tail feather was clearly, just even from looking at it without having to measure it, we could tell it was a rufous. And this is what we find. A great many of the adult male rufous have some amount of green in the back. And as I understand, though I haven't studied Allens in California, banded a few there, but a number of Allens also have a greater value of rufous in the upper back. And so scientists are believing that, in fact, there's pretty widespread breeding in their range where both rufous and Allens overlap. So this is a Lucifer hummingbird. It has beautiful purple gorget and decurved bill distinguish it. It's just a beautiful bird. We'll see that some of these at the Patton House Sanctuary in Patagonia, Arizona, and more commonly in the Chiricahuas at Coronado National Forest, I believe. And next is the broad-billed hummingbird. It's probably the most beautiful hummingbird in North America, I think. And this bird was an adult male that had come into Colorado and was banded by Fred Engelman down in the Colorado Springs area. This bird was actually I believe the third record. No, it was the third record broad-billed in Colorado. This was banded by Dave Patton about 50 miles south in Louisiana, 50 mile, just in the Baton Rouge area. And this is their first Colorado record, one that we banded in Clifton, Colorado, about 3 miles from our cabin or our home there, our home and farm. This bird was coming to a feeder and was reported as a late black-chinned hummingbird. The owner believed this bird had been there through the later part of the summer. And when I went to check out the bird, assuming it was a late black-chin, I was astounded to immediately recognize the bird by the red beneath its bill, the size and girth of it. Hundreds of birders from Colorado and across the U.S. came to see this bird in Clifton, Colorado. This one was, it's funny, I went to band this bird and I went through the book and I knew what band size it had, and I got the band pliers as the bird was still in the bird bag from taking it from the trap. And when I pulled it out of the bird bag, thought somebody was pulling a trick on me because it already had a ban. Well, it was banded by Nancy Newfield in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the earlier winter. Well, it seems that there's a pattern of movement for these broadbills from the south or the southeast into Colorado, because at least the previous two were found on basically a straight line from Louisiana through Colorado Springs into Palisade, Colorado. This is the fourth Colorado record that I caught about 3 miles from our farm. And it was an immature male, and you can see the band on his left leg. What a gorgeous bird. And it makes you wonder where he came from and where did he go. Now, in the white-eared hummingbird, similar, but a broad white stripe, superciliary stripe that goes back into the ear, and the red bill. We find that the red bills, by the way, actually vary in length throughout the season, and they'll become more intense during the breeding season. And this is true also of broad-billed hummingbirds, and I assume the others that have red in the bill. This is a male white-eared banded by Ellie Bryant in West Texas. And this is another view of a different bird he banded there, just a frontal view. And this was the first Colorado record white-eared hummingbird. It was identified, but they'd misidentified it as a juvenile male. And this was in Durango, Colorado. So I contacted the reporter, and we got permission from the owners to come and see the bird and to band it if we could. It happened, but that the owners of the property, he was formerly a maps banding station bander, and so he was very open to and really wanted us to band this bird and identify it positively, which we did as an adult female. And by the way, it was actually the habitat it was in the mountains outside of Durango, and its habitat was basically pine oak woodlands and chaparral, very much like its native habitat in south of the border. A few years ago, we were lucky to find this plain-capped starthroat at the Ash Canyon Sanctuary, Sherry Williamson's sanctuary, where they attract thousands of hummingbirds. It's a place, if you haven't been there, you need to go there, not just for hummingbirds, but for all the birds you see in that area. And what a thrill it was to be able to watch and photograph this bird. And from most views, you can see that it's really a very plain bird overall, and you couldn't see any of the red in the throat. But I was able to get a few pictures that showed the reflections of that brilliant red in his throat. But it seems to have a very narrow range angle of reflectance compared to many of hummingbirds. And here it is across from a black-chinned hummingbird. Yeah, I'm not certain. It appears a little to be an immature there because of the fluffy feather edges. There we go. We are going to see violet-crowned hummingbird. This too is a beautiful hummingbird. It's abundant in Patagonia. It's abundant also in the Chiricahua Mountains in southeast Arizona. This one was found at the Patton House Sanctuary. I lived in Patagonia for some time. My folks own and operated the Stage Stop Inn there, and so it was there that I really developed a more intense interest in birds. And I knew Marion and Wally Patton at the time. So we get into the Amazilia genus hummingbirds. The rufous-tailed hummingbird is one that's very common throughout Mexico and into Central America. I actually photographed that bird in Costa Rica. They're often found in South Texas, especially down near the southern border. The buff-bellied hummingbird, closely related, is native of South Texas and Mexico. And this is a bird I banded at the banding station of Dr. Brent Ortego in South Texas. So here in the photograph, I'm pretty sure the one on the left, the bird on the left, is an adult female. And the one on the right would be an adult male. So yes, we try to talk to everybody. I'm talking to folks when I'm talking about hummingbirds, to take care of your hummingbird feeders very carefully. This is an amazing, stunning photograph sent to me by fellow bander Hillary Morjohn in Sedona. She is working under the Hummingbird Monitoring Network there and doing studies of birds throughout throughout Arizona, but primarily now at a single station in Sedona, Arizona, or just outside of Sedona. So this bird was actually photographed about 2 weeks ago, coming to a feeder in Sedona, significantly earlier than one would expect Rivleys to show up there. And we theorize that it probably wintered in the mountains not far south of Sedona, where temperatures are a little warmer in the winter. This is an adult female Rivleys. You can see the band on her right leg. This is one that. Okay, thank you. Deb's telling me the time here, but we're almost finished. This is an adult female that we banded in our new studies to document the breeding of Rivleys in Oak Creek Canyon. Rivleys are known by all the locals as living there, being summer resident birds, but no one's actually proven it. The nests are very high. Generally, they can be in many areas, but primarily over Oak Creek there and in riparian habitat. So no one's found a nest, but we knew that we would be able to find and confirm breeding by catching the females and seeing the egg in the belly, which we did. This is the spirit of Joan Rivers. She keeps appearing in my dreams. That it illustrates the underparts of a female hummingbird. And so this is what we see in hand when we are looking for fat and breeding condition. So this is the forepart of the bird. This is actually the egg inside of the belly of the hummingbird. It's the cloaca, which is expanded, and very soon that egg will be dropped through that cloaca. See, I think that's it. Oh, and as you can see here, there are no feathers in the breast and belly of a hummingbird. And this is true of both males and females. That's true of all of the North American hummingbirds that I know of. They don't grow feathers in the belly, but we can see and blow with a fold in from the sides, and we're able to gently blow the feathers apart with a straw to be able to examine the underparts. And I think that the naked belly may be an adaptation to further streamline their body in flight. Here's another photo of the Rivleys. This was the Rivleys that we later banded also in Oak Creek Canyon. This is a male we banded in Upper Oak Creek Canyon last year. Just a magnificently beautiful birds. You recognize the thumb. Yeah, it's the famous thumb in all the hummingbird pictures. Just as a comparison, the Rivleys was separated from a Costa Rican Talamanca hummingbird, but they're virtually identical so far as I know, and identical in size. And this is a photograph I took in Costa Rica of the Talamanca next to a white-throated mountain gem, which is just basically a bit larger than our native broadtail. So you can tell this dramatic difference in size between this and the medium-sized hummingbirds. There's a fun story about this Rivley's hummingbird that had been spotted while we were banding at the Sedona Hummingbird Festival. We didn't see the bird. I didn't see the bird, and the banders didn't see the bird at all. But some of the birders kept catching glimpses of it. But at the end of our banding session, we hadn't caught the bird, and we were preparing to shut down. But then some late arriving visitors came through, and we decided to band a few more birds. The last bird of the day was this beauty. He was, as you see, not a Rivley's hummingbird. Immediately, we could tell this stark difference, and we could see that this was a hybrid black-chinned Rivley's. This is the first example we know of to ever have been documented. So it's a one-of-a-kind bird. We haven't seen it since, but I do hope we get a chance to catch it in the future. And by the way, the mensural characteristics were pretty much right in the middle of the Rivley's hummingbird and the black-chinned hummingbird. You can see this broad swath of black that made it obvious. And rather than having the iridescent purple throat, it did to some extent change to a violet color. The crown was actually green. A rather different bird. And what an excitement to catch it. Here's a great Mexican violet ear. It's a medium-sized metallic green hummingbird, commonly found in forested areas of Mexico to Nicaragua. It's a rare accidental migrant to the lower 48s, and they've been spotted in as far as, all across the United States, but very infrequently. There's one record for Colorado and Durango. And just another image, a different bird. And a view of a green-breasted mango. It's a very rare visitor from Mexico, but they have also shown up as accidentals in a number of states and have been recorded north to Wisconsin and east to North Carolina. And before we go, I want to mention that this year, the Sedona Hummingbird Festival is from July 25th to 27th. This is the event for hummingbird enthusiasts. It's a national highlight. We have expert speaker presentations, banding demonstrations, garden tours, breakfasts, the festival dinner, and birding field trips and more. And I think that if you ever have a chance to go there, you would be amazed at these festival banding situations. When we're banding the birds, and we band from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., in 3 mornings, we'll have counted anywhere from 500 to 800 visitors to our banding table. It was a pretty popular event. So I invite questions at this point, and this is a favorite picture because here I have typical male and female hummingbirds squaring off.
Well, I have a quick question. How in the world do you ban these things?
Very carefully. We catch the birds. We've been trained well. We handle one with great care. We know how not to harm them. We can immediately get them in the hand, and they're generally, most of the birds, especially adults, are immediately calm. And it's because of the way we handle them, they know they're not being harmed.
I think my question is not so much like how you are careful with them. What is the actual process? How are these like super thin mist nets? Are they, you mentioned something, what's the process?
Well, we do use mist nets in what's called a Russell surround. Basically, it's a net it surrounds in almost any shape a set of feeders in the center. And so it's basically trapezoidal. And then we'll put a decoy feeder out front that's empty. So the birds then go into the trapezoid of the net. It has a net roof over it. And when they go to the feeders in there, we rush the feeder and the birds will fly into the net, and basically we catch them on the bounce. So they don't get caught like a lot of birds. We catch them immediately. More often we use cage wire traps, and perhaps I should have shown photos of that, but we use cage wire traps because they work well. The birds are very comfortable going through the traps. We have designed traps that open at the top. And you do have a trap here, but I'm not sure we can. Okay. Here you can see some of the traps. These are cage wire traps. And so back with the line of visitors here, we have it roped off so people won't approach the feeders, and so the birds are relatively undisturbed. And cage wire traps are set up on poles and tied to those poles. We have both access doors on the side and a large door in the entry. When we're not trapping, we have the whole top opens up. So the birds are accustomed to going through the large door or the access doors, and birds tend to naturally fly up to escape. So that creates this flow in the doors and out the top. And so when we're banding, they tend to go up into the top of the trap rather than backing out the doors. We control those traps using, fishing lines. We use fishing reels and a trap release mechanism here, basically 40 feet away from the feeders and from the traps. And so we watch the traps carefully. If necessary, we watch them as they go to the feeders. We catch the birds. We watch the bird as they put their bill into the feeder port, and then we gently close the door. And very often, the birds don't notice it at all. So they're calm until we get to the trap, and we extract them quickly and put them in a bird bag and take them back to the banding table. We also use cloth bonnet traps, and I don't have any pictures of that here. Did I answer that question?
I do have a question. Are they custom tools? I mean, how do you make the tools so tiny? Are they made specifically for you guys to do the bird banding, or?
Well, essentially every bander is responsible for building their own traps, trap mechanisms or trap release mechanisms, and essentially building or acquiring banding tools which are unique to hummingbird banding. There are some makers who are making hummingbird tools, and some of them are excellent right now. We're looking at some that are being made by a gentleman named in Limb Manufacturing, Rafe. This gentleman's name is Rafe. Anyway, but he's making some wonderful tools, and they're available to banders. Some of them are still in prototype stages, but I've made most of my tools, acquired a few items. Machinists will often see the tools we need or want, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I can make that," and what they come back with is really not adequate, not fine enough, don't have the details that we need with tools. So it's difficult item to acquire for new banders. I'm working with 4 trainees, a new one in Colorado and others in Arizona. And so our job is to acquire tools with them and for them. So we're working on that project, and so that we can begin banding by mid-May. I've taken out of this program more details about band making and so on, because I really wanted to talk more about Western hummingbirds. But I do have detailed photographs of the banding pliers, the shear, the metal shear that we use to shear the strips off the banding cards, and then the specialized cutter that cuts the bands to various lengths. And we also have band leg gauges in, I think, 12 different sizes or more, 16 sizes for hummingbirds. And so there's a lot to it. And one of the things that really the big thing that discourages banders, already passerine songbird banders, from going into hummingbird banding is the fact that they have to acquire these tools and then make the bands, and making a hummingbird band takes longer than actually banding the bird, banding the bird, and recording the data on it. So that in alone, just making the bands, is a big project.
Who's analyzing the data that you're collecting?
Well, we can analyze much of it we transfer our data from field data sheets to Microsoft Access, and Deb's an expert at Microsoft Access and is able to extract data from that. And we're working with some statistical analysts that will look at data beyond that which we understand, to try to get more information out of the data that we have. But all this information is submitted to the USGS Bird Banding Laboratory, and the information from our data is available to researchers.
Do you have an idea of what percentage of birds you find that have come back year after year? Or at least 2 years, 3 years?
In Palisade, where we had a smaller population, a breeding population of birds in our orchard, our apple orchard, we would have a 65% return from year to year.
Mm. Wow.
In Peaceful Valley, I mean, there at the biggest year we had there, our peak population was probably 2,000 to 2,500 birds. Here we have so many more that we band just a fraction of the bird, and there's no way we can get any data off of that from about returns. And we can't get them from the migrant rufous or calliopes, because they basically, on the return routes, follow their noses. They go to where the food is, and those routes will be different every time they go south. So I think there was one instance where a bander in the southeast may have caught a rufous the same year in migration, but it could well have been a bird wintering there nearby. So, but in general, nobody catches southbound migrants a second time.
How well tracked are the birds that you banded? You know, how frequently have they been reported elsewhere? Is that
Not sure exactly. I think we've had 11 foreign re-encounters, some by banders who catch and release them again, and others are through recoveries of birds that have struck windows or whatever. So not very many. We used to think about 1 in 1,000. For us now, it's probably 1 in about 2,000.
So you ban them so that you can record the immediate data and only do it once from each bird?
Generally, unless we re-encounter the bird, and that can be significant, the information we get from that. The data we got from black chins is much more significant, more complete than from the broadtails. But our studies are multifaceted and don't really rely on recaptures. We don't band in order to have them recaptured, re-encountered somewhere else. We band to study particular things, primarily their plumage of the various species, ages, and sexes. And for instance, one of the things we are looking at is getting better ways to identify or distinguish the male juvenile males from juvenile female broadtails. In black chins and ruby throats, that's easy to see. I can see it often in flight, and of course, by sound, we can distinguish all of the various species by sound alone. You can close my eyes and and hear the birds as they fly by. And very often, I can tell you what species and even what sex they are, and often whether it's a juvenile or an adult. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of different things in these birds, including we were looking at initially the red spots in the throat of broad-tailed hummingbirds. The field guides don't really show this, but about 29% have one or more iridescent red spots in the throat, up to 30 and more in some females. And we were wondering if this character might be influenced by the age of the bird. But so far as we know now, we don't think that's the case. We think it's more just genetics, and because we're seeing some birds come back with more spots the following year, but many do not. So there's so much to learn. And I think we're going to be banding birds a long time after we're able to get tags on all of the birds and track them electronically, because somebody's going to have to catch those birds and put on those monitors. And we're looking at if we can get funding to put air tags on some of the rivules we're catching in order to hopefully map the population of rivules in Creek Canyon.
Steve, how old are the birds? How long do they live?
Well, generally, tell folks about 6 to 8 years for the females, 4 to 6 years for males, but they can be older. We'll see many females that'll go 7, 8, 9, 10, even 11 years. We once had a female nesting in our orchard every year, came back to the same area of the orchard for 9 years. And so we determined that we had banded her as an adult, so she was at least 9 years and 2 months old. I think the record for black-chinned at this point may be 10 and a half years, somewhere around there. Yes.
I'll ask the silliest question of the night. Have you ever been attacked by one of these birds? I'm just wondering. I know that they're tiny, but those bills look kind of sharp.
They are. They attack each other with those bills. And there's no silly question, really. And I've been flying around with these guys flying around me since childhood. I've encountered surely millions of hummingbirds flying around me, and not once has one ever actually collided with me. I mean, certainly I'm worried about one being chased into the side of my cheek or something.
But when you're banding them, it's not like I banded owls and I banded raptors, and I know like you got to be super careful. Hummingbirds, they're like, they're just pretty docile once you got them in the bag.
Generally, I mean the adult females, if they're on a nest, they can be pretty antsy. And the same with juveniles if they're bonked out of energy. So we very often will just release those birds without banding or taking additional data. But yeah, we see them poke one another quite often, and it can lead to fatalities between the hummingbirds. But I've only once had a hummingbird brush its wing against my shoulder in all my life. And yes, I've banded owls as well, saw-whets and pygmy owls and great horns and kestrels. Yeah, you have to be careful about those talons. Hummingbird talons, fortunately, don't sink into the human skin.
My sister-in-law had a rufous that returned to their feeder in Sitka, Alaska for 8 years. And he always sat on the same little twig on the same bush, so they assumed it was the same bird. And after the 8th year, he didn't come back.
That is a great question. And I don't have a positive answer to it.
I don't know if that's
about whether that particular bird, that was only one bird that liked that perch. But one of the first things you learn as a hummingbird bander is that the bird on that particular favorite perch that we see in our yards all the time isn't necessarily the same bird. And especially birds in migration, we see this flow of rufous coming through our yard in Palisade and even here. And many of them will just stop for a few drinks and move on. But they'll sit on those favored perches every time because there's something about them, the size, the space, the location of that perch that is favorite to all the hummingbirds. So that's the first thing we learned positively when we started banding hummingbirds. But there, you just can't count on that being the same bird unless it's banded and hopefully color marked.
For what it's worth, they were nesting there.
Okay, yes.
Sitka.
And in Sitka, well, Kate McLaughlin sees the same thing, and there another bander, I haven't met him, is banding up in the peninsula around Homer. But they see the same thing, and they often have many rufous banding around them. And believe me, a rufous hummingbird, any hummingbird, is going to know every good feeding station location within 5 to 12 miles of where it normally nests and has its territory. We're just establishing a new banding station 5.2 miles from our Peaceful Valley, our mountain location. It's at the Calwood Education Center, where they educate thousands of kids every year. And our new trainee, John, my new trainee, John, is going to be taking over that as his own site, where he'll manage that primarily. So we're pretty excited about that. But we expect to see movements of hummingbirds back and forth in that 5.2 miles from Peaceful Valley to Calwood.
Really interesting. So you said they can range like 5 to 8 miles around the area.
Yeah, to go from one feeding location to another. We've seen a pattern of black-chinned hummingbirds at our hummingbird orchards banding and research station at our home in Palisade or near Palisade, where we get these males coming up north, and we'll band them, and we won't see them all summer, but then we see them again in the southbound migration. And because we know the hummingbirds will tend to move in different directions as they move south, we are pretty sure that these birds have their territories within a few miles of us in the Palisade area, and not, for instance, in northern Colorado or Wyoming or southwest Wyoming, for instance.
You with as far as the USGS goes, do you guys feel like there's a target with the new administration, as far as there's with money going towards so many different things that it's sort of like vanishing? Do you guys have any is there anything that we can do as far as like making sure that doesn't happen?
Probably not. And it's hard to say what's going on. I think in general they want to trim the fat, and a lot of that's really at the upper end. And I think some of these layoffs we're seeing are actually being orchestrated by the upper level management. And but we really don't know. And we're certainly hoping that they're not cutting the bird banding lab, because they're pretty chronically understaffed. They do a great job there, by the way. And we just received, by the way, in 1 week's time, 5,000 new hummingbird bands from the BBL. All we can do is hope for the best.
So how many do you use in a season?
How many, what do we use? It varies. I'm not sure. At one time, we were banding about 1,100 to 900 birds a year, and it gradually dropped as our responsibilities became greater here. But now I think we're banding about 500 birds in a year. Yes.
Do you think that it's entirely because your responsibilities have increased, or has there been a decrease in the number of birds because your early photos were from like 23 years ago?
Um, no, I think we have devoted less time to the banding the hummingbirds and more time to organizing and training other banders. And and also we have this cabin, another cabin and a home in Palisade. So just maintaining those properties is a full-time job in itself. I have to irrigate an 800-foot wildlife shelter belt in outside of at our farm there. That means trips every 4 or 5 weeks across the state of Colorado, and I'm constantly doing remodeling and maintenance on our homes. And I've taken up bowling, and I want to get more people trained. We'll probably wind down banding as I'm getting older, and we bought a truck and a travel trailer and hope to spend some more time on the road, birding a little more.
Well, that sounds like a lot, but I'm happy to see that you don't think that there's just fewer birds.
I don't think so. I mean, breeding bird surveys are showing a decline in population of rufous. Uh, we see that at times, but it seems to vary, excuse me, from year to year. Um, sorry about the mouse. Um, in some years, we have a lot of rufous. In others, it's like they must have found some different flyway because we see very few here in Colorado, and often people even in Utah and Arizona report fewer rufous. So I don't really know what's going on there. With as far as black-chinned hummingbirds, their population is stable, probably growing as cities in the West are growing and more vegetation, more plantings allow them to nest and feed in those plantings. In the eastern slope of Colorado, black-chinned hummingbirds were pretty much in the dry areas from Colorado Springs and south. And about 20 years ago, they started moving up with climate change to, well, they inhabit the areas of the Front Range through Boulder and Denver and Longmont and north to Colorado Springs and even into Utah or Wyoming now. So I think that black chins are doing pretty well, that broadtails are pretty stable, um, and Annas are probably pretty stable too because they are a year-round resident in Arizona, in Sedona, for instance, when most of the others all of the others really migrate out. We expected long ago to see Annas move into Colorado as a breeding bird, but it really hasn't happened. And I'm not sure why. It looked like for a time there were some resident Annas in this far southwest corner, Colorado, but I'm not sure the status of those now. So, does everyone there actually feed hummingbirds in New Jersey?
We use flowers.
Flowers are great.
Actually, a property that I manage up in, or that I monitor, I should say, up in Putnam County, hangs a lot of feeders. They hang usually 5 or 6, and they have plantings. They plant a number of acres with native New York flowers and grasses and things. And of course, it's just ruby-throated, but she gets a lot. And it's very interesting. They come in and they disappear for a while, I guess, while they're nesting, and then they come back. Is what I've seen up there.
You know, a principle I've learned with hummingbirds is if you feed them, they will come. So the more flowers, the more suitable nectar flowers that the hummingbirds can access, and the more feeders you have, the more birds you'll get. So if you have any kind of home property with a lot of plantings, vegetation around it in the neighborhood, if you move from 5 or 6 hummingbird feeders to 10 or 12 hummingbird feeders, your population will dramatically increase, and you'll see that.
Interesting.
All right, does anyone have any
And
more
that's why since the 1930s, the Bouriciuses here in Peaceful Valley have built a population that numbers in the tens of thousands.
And how many feeders do you usually have up?
The peak generally about 22 of the 48-ounce feeders, and my neighbor puts out about the same number. So yeah, we can have about at least 48 of those 48-ounce feeders really going at the same time, plus our hummingbird meadow, which once the rufous come in and we start seeing the immatures move from their nests into the feeding area, it's just constant activity here. We do have, because we're banding birds here and have a lot of feeders, that of course is a attractant to bears and raccoons. Bears are, of course, the greatest problem. So we use the 2 methods. We bring in all our feeders, anything that are out in the yard, we bring them to our pulleys and pull them up under the eaves to the 9 to 10 foot level. And we also have an electric bear fence around the property, and that has been pretty effective in keeping the bears out, as long as we have it energized. Yeah.
How high is the fence?
It's actually only about 4.5 feet, 5 feet tall. And I have video and have watched myself, the bear in person, face to face, jump over that fence once, and by hanging on to an aspen and basically pole vaulting over the fence. And at that point, I immediately built an additional run, an additional 8 inches higher, and we haven't seen a bear do that since.
Interesting. Yeah, no,
May I ask?
she has one bear that has a huge problem.
Yes, and one bear can be a real problem, especially if he gets to feeders.
Yeah, he's demolished quite a few feeders.
Yeah, we've lost a lot of feeders too, to bears and to raccoons, probably over the years. I don't know, 50 feeders anyway. But it's worth it putting it out for the birds. We're using about 450 pounds of sugar each summer, but that ranges from basically the end of April into about mid-September. One year we had a lot of bear activity, and we found from trail cams that we had as many as 12 bears moving through our yard every night. And I discovered that on a neighboring property, someone who didn't own the property that was related, was actually baiting wildlife illegally. Baiting wildlife is illegal in Colorado. And he had moose and deer and raccoons and foxes and coyotes, and at least 6 bears coming to his bait pile every night. And of course, they were moving through our yard, either coming or going, mostly going down to his place to feed and then coming back through again. So that created a problem. And I thought I knew they had a trail cam there, and I thought they were just wildlife enthusiasts like myself. So I thought, that's great. They're watching the wildlife, as I do. But one time I came back from elk hunting in the Flat Tops Wilderness and got up in the morning, fixed my coffee at 6 a.m. We hear a big boom from that direction, and I knew exactly what happened. Oh, yeah. We prosecuted him, and I spent 5 hours in the witness stand. And since then, with no baiting, we just have the occasional bear. I recognize the bears as they come through. One of them we call Lumbering Jack, a great big huge bear. Last year we had 3 different bears show up on my trail cams in the yard.
Do you have a favorite kind of trail cam?
Yes, I like the Browning I have some stealth cams, but they're cheaper models, and it's worth getting a better one. The
And do you
Browning,
use the cell version, or you have them wired, or just batteries?
they're battery only. Yeah.
You go around and collect the cards,
Yeah, it would be great to have, but you have to get a subscription for
right?
the Wi-Fi operated ones. So I'm happy enough to go check the cams at various times, and um, yes, there's the Browning cams. They run about $179.
Yeah, I
For-
was studying them earlier in the summer. I'm gonna get some. I just was curious.
Yes, I think the ones I'm using is the Dark Ops or the Spec Ops or something like that. But they take excellent pictures both day and night, and great video.
So it has infrared.
Yes, yes, it's a black infrared, so the animals um, they sense it, but they don't see it. And in the video at night, the whole area lights up, so you can see clearly what's out in there. And sometimes we'll see, I've got videos where we have trails that we've built as we've done fire mitigation through the property, and these are great to take visitors and birders through on these trails. But we'll see from these same trail cams, the one and only time a spotted skunk came through, but that bears and fox and coyotes, elk, deer, moose, and raccoons. What else? Mountain lion. I'd never detected mountain lion on our property before. We've seen 3 on our trail cams.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, trail cams are a great asset. I wish I had more.
Yeah, I targeted one spot where I realized that everything goes around that corner. I actually had a gray fox there one day. I didn't get a picture, but that was very exciting.
Yes. Yeah, it's great to watch those guys. I've seen the foxes and coyotes do everything you can imagine that an animal will do on these trail cams, and I won't mention it all.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for being there for me, Sandy. I deeply appreciate it, and it's been fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good